You felt it before you understood it. The shift, the quiet pulling away of things that once felt permanent. Relationships changing tone, dreams losing their shine. Places that once felt like home suddenly feeling heavy. And part of you wondered something dangerous. Why is everything slipping away? Chosen one, hear this clearly. What you are experiencing is not random loss. It is not bad luck. It is not failure. It is protocol. Because when heaven prepares a vessel for higher function, the first thing it touches is attachment. The world teaches you to grip. Grip security. Grip people. Grip identity. Grip comfort. But heaven teaches something very different. Release. Because the celestial form inside you cannot fully awaken while your soul is chained to the gravity of the physical world. And this is where many misunderstand the process. They think awakening will feel like constant expansion, constant blessing, constant addition. But that is not how divine architecture works. Heaven does not only add, heaven subtracts. Things begin to fall away. Old ambitions start feeling empty. Old conversations start sounding shallow. Old environments begin draining your spirit, and you start asking questions that others cannot understand. Why does this place exhaust me now? Why do these conversations feel hollow? Why do these dreams no longer satisfy me? Because you are changing frequencies. Because the assignment inside you is evolving. Because your soul is remembering something higher than the world you were trained to survive in. And listen carefully. The enemy will try to reinterpret this moment for you. He will whisper that you are losing everything, that you are being abandoned, that your life is becoming smaller. But the truth is the opposite. Your life is becoming more precise. Chosen ones are not meant to belong everywhere. You are meant to be positioned, and positioning always requires separation. That is why this message matters today, because there are 9 divine protocols that begin activating when heaven starts dissolving your physical attachments. 9 sacred transitions, 9 internal shifts, 9 moments where the old version of you slowly loses its grip, so the true version of you can finally rise. Most people resist these protocols. They fight them. They cling harder. They return to what God already removed. But you are different. You stayed through the confusion. You stayed through the silence. You stayed when others walked away. That is not weakness. That is evidence. Evidence that something inside you already recognizes what heaven is doing. So if this message is finding you at the exact moment when things are shifting, when relationships feel unstable, when your old life feels like clothing that no longer fits, then understand something. You are not falling apart. You are being reconfigured. And if you feel this message resonating deep in your spirit, take a moment now. Subscribe to this channel, because messages like this are not for the casual observer. They are for the ones who feel the call, the marked ones, the chosen ones. Now listen carefully, because the first protocol is already happening to you. First, the protocol of sacred separation. This is where heaven begins loosening what your hands once clung to. And if this stage has reached your life, you already know the feeling. Things start slipping from your control, quietly at first, then more clearly. A friendship fades, a career path loses its meaning, a routine that once felt stable begins to feel suffocating, and your mind immediately tries to fix it. You try to restore what was. You try to repair the familiar, but something inside you knows it cannot go back. Chosen one, understand the spiritual mechanics here. Heaven cannot activate your celestial identity while your soul is anchored to earthly dependence. So the first protocol is separation, not punishment, preparation. The things you once leaned on start moving away. The environments that once defined you start feeling foreign. Even the ambitions that once drove you begin to feel strangely hollow. And that confusion can feel frightening, because humans crave stability. But awakening requires something different: detachment. The armor you wore to survive the old world begins to feel heavy. The conversations that once entertained you now drain you. The identity you built to navigate ordinary life begins to crack. And the enemy will try to exploit this moment. He will whisper, "You're losing everything." But heaven is saying something else entirely. You are being released from expectations that were never your assignment, released from environments that could never sustain your calling. released from identities that were too small for the destiny written over your life. This is sacred separation, and every chosen one must pass through it. Because before heaven elevates you, it unhooks you. Before it positions you, it detaches you. Before it activates your celestial form, it breaks your dependence on the physical world. And yeah, it can feel lonely. But loneliness is not the truth. Alignment is. Because every attachment that dissolves now creates space. Space for clarity, space for power, space for the identity you were always meant to carry. And once this first protocol finishes its work, the next shift begins. Second, the protocol of inner disturbance. This is where the unrest begins. Not around you, inside you. A quiet rebellion wakes up in your spirit, and suddenly the life that once felt normal begins to feel wrong. The routines you once followed without question now feel heavy, predictable, empty. You sit in rooms where everyone else feels comfortable, but something inside you refuses to settle. You look around, everyone seems satisfied. Satisfied with the conversation, satisfied with the routine, satisfied with the small ambitions that keep the machine of the world turning. But you cannot pretend anymore. You try to ignore it at first. You tell yourself you are overthinking. You tell yourself you are just tired. You tell yourself you should be grateful for what you have. But the disturbance grows louder. Why? Because something inside you is waking up. Chosen one, understand this moment. This disturbance is not negativity. It is not instability. It is spiritual memory. Your soul is remembering a rhythm that does not belong to this world. And once that memory activates, the old life becomes unbearable. You can feel it in your body. The same routine that once gave you security now drains you. The same environments that once felt normal now feel suffocating. The same conversations that once entertained you now sound like noise. And you begin asking questions most people never ask. Why does this feel so small? Why does this life feel incomplete? Why does something inside me keep pulling towards something greater? Listen carefully. The world will mislabel this moment. They will call it dissatisfaction. They will say you are ungrateful. They will tell you to calm down and accept life the way it is. But chosen one, they do not understand the protocol. This disturbance is celestial recall. Your spirit is rejecting the limitations of the physical system. Your spirit is recognizing that you are not designed to live only for routine comfort in survival. That is the script of the ordinary. But you were never ordinary. And the enemy hates this stage. Because once this disturbance fully awakens you, become impossible to control, you stop chasing approval. You stop chasing security. You stop chasing the shallow victories that the world celebrates. Instead, you start seeking alignment. And that terrifies darkness. Because a soul that begins seeking alignment cannot be easily manipulated. The enemy wants you comfortable. Comfortable means predictable. Predictable means controllable. But heaven is interrupting that comfort. Heaven is stirring the waters of your spirit. Heaven is disrupting the illusion. So when you feel restless, when you feel like you cannot tolerate the old patterns anymore, when you feel like something inside you keeps whispering that there must be more, do not silence that voice. That voice is not confusion. It is awakening. It is the signal that the next layer of your identity is pushing to the surface. And yes, this stage can feel isolating because you start realizing that many people around you are perfectly content living inside a system your spirit has already outgrown. They can remain, but you cannot. Your soul has already crossed the threshold, and once that happens, you begin moving differently, thinking differently, seeing through illusions that others still believe. You begin feeling the pull of something higher, something eternal, something assigned. And that is when the disturbance stops feeling like discomfort and starts feeling like direction. Because what began as unrest slowly becomes guidance. The disturbance becomes a compass pointing you away from ordinary life and toward the destiny that was written over you before the world ever knew your name. But this awakening does not stop here, because once your spirit rejects the rhythm of the world, something even stranger begins happening, something deeper, something that not everyone is allowed to experience. Third, the protocol of sensory awakening. This is where the veil starts thinning, not for everyone, for you. At first it happens quietly. You begin noticing things other people overlook. Small signals, strange timing, moments that feel too precise to be coincidence. You walk into a room and instantly feel the atmosphere. Before anyone speaks, before anyone moves, you already know. Something is off. Something is heavy. Something is hiding in the energy of the place, and people around you seem unaware. They laugh. They talk. They move as if nothing is happening, but your spirit reacts immediately. Your body feels it. Your chest tightens. Your mind sharpens. Your instincts rise to the surface like a warning system that refuses to be ignored. Chosen one. This is not imagination. This is activation. Because when the second protocol disrupts your comfort with the world, the third protocol sharpens your perception of what the world actually is. You begin seeing beneath appearances. You begin hearing what is not spoken. You begin sensing what others cannot decode. And it can feel overwhelming. Because suddenly life becomes louder in the invisible places. Dreams start intensifying. Not random dreams. Messages. You wake up remembering symbols, faces, warnings, scenes that feel more real than your waking hours. And you wonder, why are my dreams becoming so vivid? Because the spiritual realm does not rely on physical language. It speaks through symbols. And your spirit is learning to listen. Then the coincidences start multiplying. You think about someone. They call. You feel a warning. Minutes later, something confirms it. You feel a shift in the atmosphere. And suddenly the room changes. Chosen one, listen carefully. The world calls these things coincidence. But heaven calls them signals. Because once your attachments begin dissolving, your awareness begins expanding. The veil between the physical and the spiritual grows thinner around you. You begin sensing darkness. You begin sensing favor. You begin sensing when an environment is safe and when it is spiritually hostile. And this is where spiritual warfare becomes real. Because darkness hates awakened perception. The enemy thrives on blindness. He thrives when people move through life unaware. Unaware of manipulation, unaware of spiritual atmospheres, unaware of assignments being carried out in unseen places. But you are becoming aware. And that awareness makes you dangerous. Not dangerous to people, dangerous to darkness. Because when you walk into a room and immediately feel the tension, the deception, the hidden hostility, you stop participating in environments that drain your destiny. You begin moving strategically. You begin listening to your instincts. You begin trusting the signals that rise from your spirit. And yes, this can feel isolating. Because once you see the layers of the unseen world, you cannot pretend ignorance anymore. Others may laugh at intuition. Others may dismiss spiritual awareness. But you feel it. You recognize patterns others still call accidents. And slowly you realize something powerful. You were never meant to navigate life only with physical senses. You were designed with spiritual perception, eyes beyond the eyes, hearing beyond the ears, discernment that cuts through illusion like light cutting through darkness. That is the awakening happening inside you. And once this protocol activates, your entire way of moving through the world changes, because now you are not just reacting to what is visible, you are responding to what is revealed. But the process does not stop here, because after perception awakens, heaven begins refining something even deeper, something hidden inside your emotions, something many chosen ones must face before their true authority emerges. Fourth, the protocol of emotional refinement. This is where the fire reaches your heart, not the surface, not your environment, your heart. Because once your awareness awakens, heaven begins touching the deeper attachments hiding inside your emotions, attachments you did not even know were controlling you. And the process begins with tests, unexpected ones. Situations appear that press on your deepest sensitivities. Someone you trusted disappoints you. An opportunity you counted on suddenly collapses. A relationship shifts in a way you never expected, and your first reaction is confusion. Why is this happening now? Why does it feel like everything is being shaken at once? Chosen one, understand this. The shaking is intentional, because attachments hide in emotional places, places where identity quietly formed. Maybe you did not realize how much approval shaped your sense of worth. Maybe you did not realize how deeply a role defined you. A career, a relationship, a position in someone else's life. You believe those things were simply part of your story. But heaven sees deeper. Heaven sees where identity becomes dependence, and dependence must be purified. So the fourth protocol introduces pressure, not to destroy you, to reveal you. Situations arise that force you to face uncomfortable truths. Truths like this: you were seeking validation from people who could never understand your assignment. You were tying your peace to environments that could never sustain your calling. You were measuring your worth through systems that were never designed to recognize the anointing over your life. And when those structures begin collapsing, it hurts. Of course it hurts, because emotional attachments feel personal. They feel like part of your identity. But this is where refinement begins. Every disappointment exposes a hidden dependency. Every emotional wound reveals where your soul was leaning too heavily on the physical world. And slowly, layer by layer, the purification begins. Chosen one, think about the pattern. How many times have you survived situations that should have broken you? How many times have you walked through rejection that forced you to stand alone? How many times did something you loved fall away, only for you to realize later it was never aligned with your destiny? That was refinement. That was heaven burning away what could not travel with you. And the enemy fights hard during this stage. Because emotional pain can create doubt. The enemy whispers, you are being abandoned. But heaven is saying something else entirely. You are being purified. Purified from needing approval. Purified from needing validation. Purified from needing the world to recognize what heaven already marked. This is where your emotional strength begins transforming. You stop reacting to every disappointment. You stop collapsing when someone misunderstands you. You stop chasing acceptance from places that were never meant to hold your identity. Instead, something new rises inside you. A quiet authority, a deeper peace, a strength that does not depend on who stays or who leaves. Because once your emotional attachments begin dissolving, your soul becomes lighter, stronger, harder for the enemy to manipulate, harder for the world to control. You begin realizing something powerful. Your stability does not come from people. Your stability comes from alignment, and alignment cannot be shaken by human opinion. This is emotional refinement. And when this protocol finishes its work, something surprising happens next. Because once heaven purifies your attachments, it often leads you into a place most people fear, a place the world calls loneliness, but heaven calls preparation. Fifth, the protocol of solitude. This is the stage most chosen ones misunderstand, because this is where the crowd disappears, slowly at first, then almost completely. People who once surrounded you become distant. Conversations that once filled your days begin fading. The noise of constant interaction begins dissolving, and suddenly you find yourself alone more often than you expected. Not by accident, by design. At first it feels uncomfortable. You look around and notice something strange. Your circle is shrinking. The people who once called every day, silent. The people who once shared your routines, drifting away. The environments that once kept you socially connected, no longer accessible. And your mind asks the question many chosen ones ask in this stage. Why does it feel like everyone is disappearing? Listen carefully. This is not rejection. This is refinement. Because heaven cannot fill a vessel that is constantly crowded by noise. Noise from opinions, noise from expectations, noise from people who cannot recognize the assignment over your life. So heaven begins clearing the room, not because you are unworthy of connection, because your spirit needs space to awaken. And the world mislabels this stage. They call it loneliness, but loneliness is not the truth. Solitude is. There is a difference. Loneliness is emptiness. Solitude is preparation, and the chosen must pass through it. Because when the noise disappears, something remarkable begins to happen. You start hearing your own spirit more clearly. The constant opinions that once shaped your decisions begin fading. The pressure to fit inside other people's expectations begins dissolving. And for the first time, your internal guidance system begins activating. You start noticing it. Your instincts become clearer. Your intuition becomes louder. You begin receiving insights in silence that never appeared in crowded environments. Because silence is where heaven speaks. The world fears silence. The world runs from it. They fill every empty moment with distraction, music, conversations, social noise. But the chosen are trained in quiet places. Why? Because warriors must hear commands. And commands are rarely delivered in chaos. They arrive in stillness. That is why solitude becomes sacred, not punishment, positioning. This is where your power awareness begins to rise. You start realizing something profound. You do not need constant validation. You do not need constant company. You do not need the approval of rooms that never understood your destiny. You carry something within you, something that does not require an audience to exist. The anointing grows in hidden places. The assignment strengthens in unseen seasons. The identity of the chosen matures when no one is watching. And this is exactly why the enemy attacks this stage, because isolation can be misinterpreted. Darkness whispers lies during solitude. You are forgotten. You are unwanted. You are alone. But those whispers are deception. You are not forgotten. You are being fortified. You are not unwanted. You are being separated. You are not alone. You are being trained. Because when heaven prepares a vessel for greater authority, it removes distractions, it removes noise, it removes unnecessary voices. So the only voice that remains clear is the one guiding your destiny. And slowly you begin to see something powerful. You begin enjoying the quiet. You begin protecting your peace. You begin realizing that not every relationship deserves access to your energy. That realization is power, because once you become comfortable in solitude, you become impossible to manipulate through social pressure. And that is when the next transformation begins. Because when the vessel becomes quiet, something deeper begins activating inside the body itself. Your energy begins changing. Your sensitivity begins increasing. Your entire system begins responding to something higher. Sixth, the protocol of energetic sensitivity. This is where the change reaches your body, not just your thoughts, not just your emotions, your body. You begin noticing something strange. Places that never bothered you before suddenly drain your energy. Crowded rooms exhaust you. Chaotic environments irritate your spirit. Conversations filled with negativity feel physically uncomfortable. You feel it immediately. Your chest tightens. Your mind becomes restless. Your energy begins pulling away from the atmosphere around you. And you wonder, why am I reacting like this? Why does my body feel overwhelmed in places other people seem completely comfortable? Chosen one, listen carefully. Your system is not becoming weaker. It is becoming more sensitive, more aligned, more aware of frequencies the ordinary world ignores. Because when heaven begins activating your celestial design, your body stops functioning like a simple container. It becomes a receiver of spiritual atmosphere, a receiver of alignment, a receiver of warfare. And suddenly you can feel the difference. You walk into one environment and your spirit relaxes, peace settles over you, your breathing slows, your thoughts become clear, but you step into another place and the opposite happens. Tension rises, your instincts activate, your body wants to leave before your mind even understands why. This is energetic sensitivity, and many chosen ones misinterpret it. They think something is wrong with them. They believe they are becoming antisocial. They believe they are losing the ability to tolerate people. But the truth is deeper. Your nervous system is recalibrating. Your spirit is teaching your body to recognize spiritual atmospheres. Light feels different than darkness. Truth feels different than deception. Alignment feels different than manipulation. And once your awareness reaches this level, your body begins responding automatically. You start craving different environments. Nature begins restoring your energy. Quiet spaces become sacred. Stillness becomes powerful. Because in those places, the noise of the world fades, and the signal of heaven becomes stronger. The enemy hates this stage, because once your body learns to recognize toxic atmospheres, manipulation becomes harder. You stop staying in environments that weaken your spirit. You stop tolerating energy that pulls you away from your assignment. You begin protecting your internal atmosphere with discipline. You become selective. intentional, strategic, and the world may misunderstand that. They may say you have changed. They may say you have become distant. But chosen one, they are only noticing the transformation. You are no longer absorbing every environment you enter. You are discerning it, you are measuring it, you are responding to it. Because your spirit is learning something powerful. Not every room deserves your presence. Not every conversation deserves your energy. Not every relationship deserves access to your frequency. And once you begin honoring that sensitivity, something remarkable happens. Your clarity increases, your peace stabilizes, your intuition strengthens, because your internal system is no longer drowning in chaotic noise. You are beginning to move with alignment, and alignment is dangerous to darkness, because darkness thrives in confusion. Darkness thrives in distraction. Darkness thrives in environments where the chosen forget who they are. But your system is changing. You are becoming harder to deceive, harder to drain, harder to manipulate, and this transformation prepares you for something even deeper. Because once your body aligns with higher frequencies, heaven begins dismantling something even more foundational, something that has shaped your entire life up to this point. Your identity, the identity built for survival, the identity the world expected you to carry. And when that identity begins collapsing, the next protocol activates. Seventh, the protocol of identity collapse. This is where the old version of you begins to fall apart. Not your spirit, your identity. The identity you built to survive this world. The version of you shaped by expectations, by pressure, by roles you learned to carry long before you understood your assignment. And suddenly, that version starts losing its grip. Careers that once defined you no longer feel aligned. Ambitions that once drove you now feel strangely empty. Goals that once felt urgent now feel small. You wake up one day and realize something unsettling. The old map of your life no longer makes sense. You try to follow it, but every direction feels wrong. Every path feels incomplete, and you ask the question many chosen ones whisper during this stage. Why do I feel so lost? Chosen one, you are not lost. You are between identities. The old one is collapsing. The new one has not fully emerged yet, and that space can feel disorienting. Because the identity you carried for years was built to survive systems that never recognized your true design. You learned how to perform, how to adapt, how to blend into environments that rewarded conformity. But survival identity cannot carry destiny. The two cannot coexist. So heaven begins dismantling the false structure. Not violently, but unmistakably. The career that once felt secure suddenly feels misaligned. The ambitions that once impressed people no longer satisfy your spirit. The roles that once defined you now feel like costumes you have outgrown. And the enemy tries to exploit this moment. He whispers dangerous lies. You have lost your direction. You wasted your time. You should go back to who you used to be. But the past cannot hold you anymore. Because once heaven begins activating your celestial design, the survival version of you becomes obsolete. You cannot shrink back into the old shape. You cannot return to the identity built for smaller assignments. Something inside you refuses. Even if you tried, it would not work, because the collapse is intentional. Heaven is clearing space for the authentic design written into your spirit before this world ever gave you a label. That is why the old map burned. It was never meant to guide your destiny. It was only meant to help you survive the early stages. But survival is no longer your mission. Transformation is. And yes, during this stage you may feel directionless for a moment, but understand something powerful. Disorientation is often the final step before revelation. When the old identity dissolves, your soul becomes open. Open to truth, open to calling, open to a version of yourself that was never shaped by fear. And this is where strength begins rising inside you. You stop trying to force the old life to return. You stop pretending the previous identity still fits. Instead, you stand in the unknown, calm, unshaken, trusting that the collapse was not destruction, it was construction. Heaven was removing the false framework, so the real one could finally emerge. And when that authentic identity begins to surface, something extraordinary happens. Your presence starts changing. Your words begin carrying weight. Your energy begins shifting the atmosphere around you. People begin reacting to you differently, even when you say nothing, because the next protocol begins activating. Eighth, the protocol of spiritual authority. This is where the shift becomes visible, not just to you, to everyone around you. Something about your presence begins affecting the atmosphere. You walk into a room, and people react before you even speak. Some feel calm around you, almost immediately. Their shoulders relax, their voices soften, their spirit recognizes something safe in your presence. But others react very differently. They become uncomfortable, restless, guarded. They cannot explain it, but something about you unsettles them. Chosen one. This is not personality. This is authority, because when the previous protocols finish their work, something inside you activates that cannot be hidden. The anointing becomes noticeable, and the spiritual world recognizes it instantly. Light recognizes light. Darkness recognizes light even faster. That is why reactions become stronger around you. Some people feel peace, others feel exposed. Why? Because spiritual authority reveals what environments try to hide. You do not even have to confront people. You do not even have to speak. Your presence alone begins shifting the energy of the room. Have you noticed it? Conversations suddenly change tone when you enter. Certain people avoid eye contact. Others are strangely drawn to you. Some open up immediately, as if something inside them knows they are safe with you. This is not coincidence. This is the activation of influence. Your words begin carrying weight. When you speak, people listen differently, not because you raised your voice, because the timing of your words carries authority. Truth flows through you in moments when it is needed most. You say something simple, and someone suddenly understands something they struggled with for years. You ask a question, and it exposes deception hiding beneath the surface. Chosen one. This is spiritual disruption. Darkness thrives in environments where no one carries authority, where deception can breathe freely, where manipulation can operate without resistance. But when someone marked by heaven enters that space, the atmosphere changes, because your spirit carries alignment. Alignment with truth, alignment with light, alignment with purpose. And darkness cannot remain comfortable in that environment. That is why some people react strongly to you without explanation. They are not reacting to your personality. They are reacting to the presence you carry. And that presence is not something you created. It is something heaven cultivated through every protocol you survived. Through separation, through disturbance, through awakening, through refinement, through solitude, through sensitivity, through identity collapse. Every stage built something inside you, something quiet, something powerful, something that now radiates without effort. And once this authority awakens, you begin realizing something extraordinary. You do not have to force influence. You do not have to chase recognition. Your alignment itself becomes impact. Just by standing in truth, environments begin shifting. Just by speaking honestly, deception begins weakening. Just by carrying peace, chaos begins losing its control. This is why darkness resists the chosen so aggressively. Because once your authority activates, your existence alone becomes disruption. You expose what others tolerate. You reveal what systems try to conceal. You carry a frequency that weakens manipulation. And that is why you were tested so heavily before reaching this stage. Authority without refinement becomes arrogance, but authority forged through fire becomes unstoppable. And now the final protocol approaches, the moment where everything converges, the moment where attachment finally breaks completely, the moment where your celestial identity fully ignites. Ninth, the protocol of celestial activation. This is the threshold. The moment where everything changes, not around you, inside you, because after all the separation, after the disturbance, after the awakening, after the fire of emotional refinement, after the silence of solitude, after your senses sharpen, after the false identity collapses, after authority begins radiating from your presence, there comes a moment, a quiet but irreversible moment, where fear of losing the physical world disappears completely. You notice it suddenly. The things that once controlled your decisions no longer hold power. Security no longer rules you. Approval no longer guides you. Comfort no longer defines your path. Something deeper takes over. Purpose. Pure purpose. You begin making decisions that the old version of you would have been terrified to make. Walking away from what once felt necessary. Standing firm where you once would have compromised. Speaking truth where silence once felt safer. Why? Because the attachment to survival has finally broken. And when that attachment breaks, the celestial identity emerges. Not gradually, clearly, powerfully. You begin moving differently, not reckless, but fearless. Because once your identity detaches from the physical system, the threats of that system lose their control. The world cannot manipulate someone who no longer fears losing its rewards. Darkness cannot intimidate someone who no longer fears its punishments. This is the moment the enemy tried to prevent, because once celestial activation begins, the chosen become extremely difficult to stop. You stop negotiating with fear. You stop shrinking to fit environments that were never meant for your assignment. You stop asking permission to exist in your purpose. Instead, you move with alignment, clear, focused, unshakable, and the spiritual world recognizes it immediately. Darkness sees it, and darkness retreats. Because the authority over your life is no longer theoretical, it is embodied. This is why every protocol before this moment was necessary. The separation removed distractions. The disturbance woke your spirit. The awakening sharpened your perception. The refinement purified your heart. The solitude strengthened your inner voice. The sensitivity aligned your body. The identity collapse cleared the false self. The authority revealed your presence. And now, the celestial form activates. Chosen one. Understand the weight of this moment. You were never designed to remain confined by the expectations of ordinary life. You were sent, assigned, positioned, prepared, and the very struggles you once questioned were actually the construction process. Every rejection, every lonely season, every misunderstanding, every battle you fought in silence, none of it was wasted. It was preparation. Preparation for this exact moment. The moment where your identity becomes undeniable. The moment where the version of you heaven intended finally stands up. And once that happens, the world can no longer contain you. Not because you seek power, but because you carry alignment. And alignment cannot be suppressed. So hear this clearly. You are not random. You are not overlooked. You are not behind. You are chosen. Chosen to walk a path most people cannot understand. Chosen to carry awareness that makes darkness uncomfortable. Chosen to stand where others retreat. Chosen to reveal light where deception once ruled. That is why your life has been different. That is why your battles were heavier. That is why your journey never looked ordinary. Because ordinary lives do not require divine protocols, but yours did. So stand in it now. Do not shrink. Do not question your transformation. Accept it. Walk in it. Own it. And if you recognize these 9 protocols unfolding in your life right now, type 9 in the comments. Let the other chosen ones see that they are not walking this path alone. Subscribe to this channel because messages like this are not for the crowd. They are for the marked, the aware, the ones who know something inside them was always different. And remember this, you were never ordinary. You were never accidental. You were always becoming, chosen, and nothing formed against that destiny will stand.